AgWeek Weather is sponsored by Bremer Bank. Connect with a banker today at bremer.com.
After some unseasonable temperatures, can the region expect to cool down? Here's our Agri-weather outlook.
Here we are now into the heart of October, the middle of October, and we're looking at a weather pattern that quite frankly is a little bit strange, which is quite typical for the middle of the fall season. Lots of swirls, lots of things we call cutoff lows, lots of blockiness setting up across North America and Europe as well. What it means for our area is if there are any first flakes of snow here and there, it would be in the northern areas where a little wet snow might mix in with a little rain shower. I don't see the first organized snowstorm. In fact, overall, all this convoluted jet stream mess that I'm about to show you is resulting in a relatively mild mid-October pattern. No sudden early start to winter yet. Now, we do at the moment have a fair amount of troughiness over the eastern part of the United States. That is definitely there. And what we're actually seeing, though, is that's pulling down some fairly cool weather, sending up some fairly mild weather northward into the central plains, and eventually this is going to form a bit of a cutoff low in this area as the main polar jet stream goes way up north. Southern branch of that jet heads across the south, and then we get this sort of cutoff low. What does that mean? It means we're going to keep things fairly mild. We'll keep the really cold air bottled up way up north. Alaska, northwest Canada will have some cold weather. The really hot weather, and by this time of year, I'm talking about that being 80s and around 90, mostly 80s actually. That's going to be along the Gulf Coast where it belongs this time of year. And most of the Great Plains and Midwest will look fairly warm. Now, the cold weather threatening into the Northeast, but with this cold low, it's not an Arctic air connection, so I don't anticipate anything terribly cold there. Moving on into the second week now. Now we're right into the middle part of the month of October. I think that closed low will finally kind of just spin itself into nothing, but we still have this split flow pattern over the eastern part of North America, which I think will basically keep the really cold air up north for the time being. All right, so what are we talking about with precipitation? As you might imagine, with this split flow pattern, with no real exchange of significant air masses, not talking about a whole lot of stormy weather. There may be some tropical moisture here, especially leftover storm coming into the Maritimes of Canada, and that could produce some fairly significant rain there. And some of those showers and thunderstorms will spin down to the Gulf Coast and down to Florida, which looks fairly wet for the time being. Late in this period, around mid-month, I do look for a fairly significant Pacific Northwest storm to move down in and bring some rain to Washington and Oregon. But a lot of the middle part of the country will be fairly dry, and it doesn't look like things will change as we go to the second week of the forecast. Most of the Great Plains Midwest, pretty dry.